Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Anita Desai. I'm the Executive Director of St. Leonard's Society of Canada. And I'll just get us started by acknowledging that SLSC is located on the traditional unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory, also known as Ottawa. Our 10 member organizations within our network nationally are located on various traditional unceded lands across the country, as are many of you who are gathering alongside us today from places that are home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. So, acknowledging this reminds us that we live, work, and collaborate both in person and virtually as a result of the resources and friendship of Indigenous people across the country today. So, thanks for being here. Quick little introductory note about us in case you are not familiar with St. Leonard's Society of Canada. We are a national membership-based organization that brings together a network of individuals and organizations to collectively address the needs of people involved in the criminal justice system. Beginning with supportive housing, we work together to advocate for safer, healthier, and more inclusive communities. Our purpose is to promote humane and informed criminal and social justice policy, practice, and leadership, responsible leadership to foster safer communities. And what a better way to do that than being with you all here today for today's conversation, focusing specifically around policy and the federal framework to reduce recidivism, which, I think is really wonderful opportunity to have this conversation. This is the second webinar in our new Community Connections series that will be taking place monthly until next summer. Throughout our series, various guest speakers will be exploring what's working, what's possible, and what still needs to change on key social and criminal justice issues, particularly those that are relevant to the federal framework to reduce recidivism. So the vision for these webinars was to promote public education and awareness with key actors to advance humane and informed criminal and social justice policies and practices. And this was really made possible by the dedicated efforts of Roshana this past summer to make our vision for this series a reality. So thank you so much, Roshana, for all of your hard work to bring everybody together today. So we're fortunate today to be joined by the Research Division of the Department of Public Safety to examine how recidivism can be defined to support long-term goals related to community safety and crime prevention. Before we unpack what meaningful measurement looks like and how data-driven recidivism reduction goals can really help drive a more effective justice system across the country, I'm going to invite, maybe starting with Nicole, I'll invite you to introduce yourself and anyone else on your team, and then you can just take it away from there.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. By the way, we're very excited and privileged actually to be able to be here. We've talked about it, so this is amazing that we're able to do this, and nice to know we're the second ones. So Nicole Frenette, or Nicole Frenette, whatever works for you. I'm the director of the Research Division and the Crime Prevention Branch at Public Safety Canada, and I will let my colleagues introduce themselves. We have research, but we also have representatives from our policy colleagues as well. So I let them introduce themselves, and then I'll do a quick introduction afterwards.
Hey, my name is Sin Lee. I'm an acting manager at Crime Prevention and Corrections Research Unit. So thank you for inviting us again. And yeah, I'm so excited to share our work and some issues we have. Lauren?
Hi, my name is Lauren Bellier. I'm a senior research analyst on Sung's team, and likewise, I'm very excited to be here.
I think it might be my turn. My name is Stéphanie Lalonde. I'm the Senior Policy Advisor on the Federal Framework to Reduce Recidivism. And interestingly enough, this is what brought me to public safety, because I believed in the objectives and what the framework wants to do. So it's really a pleasure to be here with you today.
That's great. Thank you so much. Is Marc-Étienne there? No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't able to make. That's great. So maybe first, la présentation va être en anglais, mais nous sommes disponibles évidemment pour répondre à vos questions en français. But I just wanted to start maybe just to situate yourself who we are in terms of the research division at Public Safety Canada. So we offer research services at the request of our policy and our program colleagues in the crime prevention branch, and we support a wide variety of areas. So in the area of crime prevention, community safety, law enforcement and policing, corrections, and recidivism. And that includes quantitative and qualitative research as well as knowledge mobilization, because we want to make sure that evidence is used in decision making. And the other thing too that we do is that we're the lead on for the department on the liaison officer committee. And I'm just going to take a little time to explain what that is, because it will help inform a bit what the presentation will be referring to. So first of all, the Liaison Officer Committee supports the National Justice Statistics Initiative. And what that is that since 1981, the federal, provincial, and territorial deputy ministers responsible for justice and public safety in Canada have been working together along with Statistics Canada on the NJSI, the National Justice Statistics Initiative. And the mandate really is to provide information to the justice community, the public, on the nature and extent of crime and victimization. It also provides details about the administration of criminal and civil justice in Canada. And of course, there's an operational arm to the NGSI, and those are our colleagues at Statistics Canada and the Canadian Centre for Justice and Community Safety Statistics. And they're responsible for the development, for the collection and the integration of data that comes from many various areas in the criminal justice system. So courts, police, corrections, they integrate that data, and then they do analysis of that data so that we can have trends in Canada. And in that area, we regularly fund letters of agreement with StatsCan on key initiatives in the area that we serve, always in support of the objectives. So I will then go into the topic itself of recidivism. I just want to note that it's a topic that's been extensively studied, particularly in academic settings. So researchers have explored its causes, its patterns, its interventions. So our presentation is really just one slice of this broader research landscape. As Anita mentioned, we had different types of formats for the presentation, which we provided PowerPoint and Word, but we also have versions that have alt text. So if you require this for screen readers, please let us know. I'm happy to oblige. But I will pass the baton to the expert, to Sung and Lauren, for the presentation itself.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. So good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you for inviting us to speak on this important topic. So today we will be presenting on defining and measuring recidivism. And it's a complex and critical issue in the field of criminal justice and public safety. Our presentation, we will begin with the brief overview of the key challenges and considerations in how recidivism is defined and measured. From there, we will explore some factors that influence how recidivism data is defined and interpreted, and sharing insight from recent studies that apply different definition and methodology. And then we will highlight key takeaways from this body of work, and we will conclude with an open discussion to hear your thoughts and questions. So yeah, let's start by defining recidivism. So as you can see here in the slide, broadly, recidivism refers to repeated criminal behavior. In other words, when individuals re-engage with the criminal justice system after previous involvement. The key challenge is that there's no single and universally accepted definition of recidivism, either in Canada and internationally. Definition and methodologies vary depending on objectives and data availability. For example, the RCMP may focus on more rearrest rates, or the Parole Board of Canada often track technical violation during parole supervision. In the context of this webinar, the studies we review use different measures of recidivism tailored to their research questions and data sources. Importantly, these variations do not undermine the validity of the studies. Each measure is appropriate within each context. However, it's crucial to recognize that these definitions are not directly compatible. For example, with conviction rate tend to be lower than rearrest rate because not all arrests lead to the conviction. So we have to keep in mind it's not compatible because there's no kind of standardized definition of recidivism. So to take a look at the factors for when considering for the consideration when measuring recidivism, there's some key factors here. How new criminal activities measures. For example, new arrest typically produce higher rate than new convictions. So we have to make sure which types of offense we are interested in measure as a recidivism. And then second factor is length of follow period. Because usually longer follow-up period usually show higher rate because we have a more period to follow up, and then there's more chance those who release in community commit crime. The third one is the types of criminal included in the definition. For example, non-violent offenses often higher rates, while sexual offenses are lower. And then the last one is who is included in the definition or in the data set. So for example, young individuals tend to have higher rates than older adults. And then another thing is that we have to consider is not listed in the presentation, but data sources, right? National level data often provide more comprehensive and coverage than provincial and regional data. So when you look at the national level compared to provincial, shows higher rates of recidivism rates. So there's more, but we provided some key factors when considering measuring recidivism. So these choices significantly influence how recidivism rates are calculated and interpreted. So from here, we look at the recent studies that report recidivism rate using different definitions. So our goal is to help you understand how this variation affect interpretation and why context matters. So first study we will introduce is a correctional and conditional release correctional and conditional release statistical overview annual report, usually managed by Public Safety Canada. So you can take a look. You'll see all different examples from here. We'll take over the Lauren. Lauren go over some statistics and recidivism rates from CCRSO.
Thank you, Sung. So yes, the first example of recidivism measurement comes from the Corrections and Conditional Release Statistical Overview, also known as the CCRSO, which has been published annually by Public Safety since 1998. One section of the CCRSO presents annual data from the Parole Board of Canada concerning the outcomes of individuals from federal prisons on conditional release. That is, those under community supervision on either day parole, full parole, or statutory release as part of their sentence. In this context, recidivism is defined as a revocation of conditional release, with the individual returning to federal custody due to breaches of supervision conditions or committing a new violent or nonviolent offense. Go to the next slide, please. So this data was pulled from the most recent CCRSO publication, which presented data up to fiscal year 2022 to 2023. As you can see in Figure 1, the vast majority of individuals from federal prison on full parole completed their supervision period successfully at the end of fiscal year 2022-23, while only about 10% returned to custody for breach of conditions and 2.5% returned to custody for committing a new violent or nonviolent offense. Outcomes for those on day parole and statutory release showed similar patterns. While revocation of conditional release can be a useful way to measure recidivism, as it helps assess parole board decisions, it includes both breaches of conditions as well as new offenses. and is easy to track in correctional databases, it doesn't give a complete picture of recidivism. Given the population only captures those on conditional release, using revocation data alone limits insights to general reoffending and the impact on community safety. Next slide, please. The next example is a report from Statistics Canada on gender-related homicide, which is defined as solved homicides perpetrated against women and girls because of their gender, specifically by a man or boy. From 2009 to 2022, there were approximately 2,400 police-reported homicides of women and girls, with roughly 1,500 of those classified as gender-related homicides, averaging about 104 victims per year. In the same time frame, approximately 1,300 men and boys were accused of a gender-related homicide in Canada. While this report does not provide specific information on recidivism, data is presented on the number of police contacts before and after the homicide was perpetrated. Next slide, please. That data is presented here in Figure 2 and differentiated by the gender-related status of the homicide. Altogether, about 6 in 10 men and boys accused of gender-related homicide had at least one other contact with police either before or after the homicide, compared to about 8 in 10 individuals accused of non-gender-related homicide. Overall, individuals accused of gender-related homicide were less likely to have contacts with police than those accused of non-gender-related homicide. It's important to note that this study was not designed to explicitly measure recidivism. For example, no follow-up time was provided, and the findings don't fully explore post-release outcomes, which are essential for understanding recidivism in the context of reintegration. Rather, this example was chosen to highlight the challenges of measuring recidivism given minimal information. And I'll pass it back to Sung for the next
Can I just
example.
add to that? Sorry, Lauren.
Yep.
Because we gave an example of contacts with police. Sorry, my dog is is a bit upset at me, but we do have other types. So this is a publication that was funded. My understanding is from WAGE, so Women and Women and Gender Equality Canada. But we do have another one that's coming up and funded by Public Safety on patterns of reoffending among accused persons living in rural areas. And that's coming either November or December. So those are example of police contacts.
Okay, so another example we want to provide is a Pan-Canadian Recontact project. Before we dive in the study results, we'll provide a brief background on this work. It has been recognized that there are gaps in recidivism data, particularly in accounting for various factors needed to measure recidivism accurately and reliably. To address this gap, Public Safety Canada, in collaboration with the Canadian Centre for Justice and Community Safety Statistics at Statistics Canada, has been working to develop a national database that tracks repeated contact with the criminal justice system. So this initiative aims to create a more consistent and comprehensive foundation for understanding recidivism across jurisdictions and also across different stages of the criminal justice system, such as police, courts, and corrections. Currently, the database includes correctional and criminal justice data from 5 provinces: Alberta, British Columbia, Nova Scotia, Ontario, and Saskatchewan. This represents an important step toward the building a clearer and more complete picture of recidivism in Canada. So the first Juristat publication based on this new kind of data was released in 2024. It's publicly available, so we put some reference at the bottom of the slide so you can access the article, or if you wanna, if you send me email, send me email, we can share the article with you. So in this study, recontact event, recidivism event was defined as any new federal statute conviction in the 5 provinces where the offense date occurred after release from full-time custody or the start of the intermittent or community sentence. So this analysis examine the reconvictions over a follow-up period of up to 4 years. Can you go next slide, please? So this diagram illustrates how the juristat study defined a recidivism event. So again, the definition is based on conviction, which is most commonly reported measure across jurisdiction, and collective conviction rate within 1 to 5 years following release. So we define the recidivism as any reconviction. But unique approach in this study is that it was designed to improve accuracy by using the offense date as the reference point rather than the conviction date, while still requiring that the case result in the conviction. So when calculating recidivism rates, the offense date determine whether the event fall within the follow period, but not the conviction date. So the follow period start at the release and continues for up to 4 years, shown on x-axis, actually the 5 in this figures. For this analysis, we focus on the fixed 3-year window for explain how we define recidivism. So let's look at the example here. Left side is a case we use offense date. And then right side the figure is the case we use the conviction date. So I will explain why we picked the offense date next slide, but I will explain the definition. So first case, the top, the offense occurred within 3 years, and the conviction happens later. Yeah, you get the first figure in here. And then this counts as a recidivism event under the current definition because we consider conviction is a recidivism event, but we consider offense date instead of conviction date. In that case, this case is a recidivism event. But when you look at the right side of figure, when we using the offense conviction date, that count is not recidivism. So I will explain why the beneficial of using off next slide, but continue with the next case. The second case, the offense occur after 3 years. So we are not sure if this case was convicted later. So this does not count as recidivism. And third case, both the offense and conviction occur within 3 years. Yeah, this is definitely a recidivism event. And then fourth case, there's no offense, new offense, so no recidivism event. So only difference between the recidivism rate between those two cases is the first case. The offense date is happened within the fixed 3 year, but conviction date is occurred after 3 years. So the key takeaway is that the offense date drives calculation, not the conviction date. This approach helps provide more accurate picture of the behavior after release. So let me explain the why. So can you go to the next slide? So the why using the offense date instead of conviction date can be beneficial when measuring recidivism. The first, offense date is more reliable indicator of criminal behavior. It reflects the actual time when the criminal occurred, giving us a more accurate timeline of individuals' action after release. The second, the offense date is often a better match for other variables we analyze, such as dynamic risk factors or socioeconomic conditions. These factors are most relevant at the time of the offense, not months or years later when the conviction happens. Third, the offense date is not affected by court delays or administrative processes. Conviction dates can be influenced by legal proceeding, backlog in the court, or other external factors that have nothing to do with the person's behavior or risk of reoffending. So by focusing on the offense date, we get a clear picture of when the criminal behavior occurred, which help us interpret its recidivism rate more accurately and link them to meaningful risk factors. So from the next slide, we'll show more some study result based on the recidivism definition. I just explained it. So across all five provinces, we see some following pattern. Kind of 37% of the cohort was reconvicted within 1 year, and 45% within 2 years, and 50% within 3 years. And then looking at the chart, notice that difference between custody and community courts. For those with a custody sentence, the reconviction rates are much higher, 53, 62, and 66% within 3 years. And for those under community supervision, rates are lower, 28% within 1 year, and 36% within 2 years, and 40% within 3 years. This means that nearly twice as many individuals with a custody sentence were reconvicted within 1 year, and then also 2 and 3 years to those sentenced to community supervision. So we got a list of follow period. The custody court consistently show higher conviction rate than the community courts. Yeah, it's fine. The next slide. So at this slide, show the 3-year incidence reconviction rate by age and gender and offense type. Across all groups, younger individuals, we just compare those 34, 18 to 34, and then 45 or older. So younger individual had a higher reconviction rate. So especially men aged 18 to 34 had the highest rate at 56%, followed by women in the same age group at 51%. And for those aged 45 and older, the rates were lower, 44% for men and 37% for women. And looking at the offense type, the largest difference between men and women were for violent offenses and other criminal code federal statute offenses. For example, the 3-year incidence of new violent conviction was 27% for men aged 18 to 34, compared to 17% for women. It's about 1.6 times higher. And difference were smaller for property offense and administration of justice offenses, but men still slightly higher rate across most categories. So overall, these findings highlight two kind of key patterns. Age matters. The younger individuals are more likely to reoffend. Gender difference persists, especially for violent offenses. Can you go next slide, please? So yeah, in this slide, we compare the conviction rate between indigenous and non-indigenous cohorts. So overall, in this data set, about 1/4 of the cohort was indigenous individuals. And then for indigenous identity group, data was available for only 4 provinces. So among the indigenous individuals, 48% were First Nation, and 15% from Métis, and 1% Inuit. Now looking at the chart, among men aged 18 to 34, 73% of indigenous individuals were reconvicted within 3 years, compared to 51 of non-indigenous men. And then for men aged 35 or older, the rates were 60% for indigenous and 41% for non-indigenous. And among women aged 18 to 34, 66% of indigenous individuals were convicted, compared to 44 of non-indigenous women. So these findings highlight 2 key points. Indigenous individuals are overrepresented in the correctional system compared to the proportion of general population, and they have higher reconviction rate across all age groups. Go to next page, please. And then we compare to also compare the conviction rate among Black Canadians as well. So yeah, this analysis compared all different ethnic group, indigenous and Black and other racialized group, and white individuals in the court across 4 provincial correctional program where identity data were available. So again, indigenous individuals had the highest incident of reconviction within 3 years. But Black Canadians and white individuals had similar rates. You can see the first column, any new conviction, 49% and 48% respectively. In other racialized group, we merge all other because there's small numbers, so we cannot disaggregate other racial groups. So we just using the aggregate group as other racialized group had the lowest incident at 35%. For the violence offenses, indigenous individuals had the highest rate, followed by Black Canadians and white individuals. In the property offenses, indigenous also has a highest 36% compared to 28% for white and 24% Black Canadians. So from this slide, just a few key points. The Black and white individuals show similar overall reconviction rate, but Black individuals have a slightly higher rate for violent offenses. Says while white individual had higher rate for property offenses. Other racialized group consistently show the lowest reconviction rate across all categories. So that's the outcome from this data. So if you want more details and other interesting outcome, you can get access the JSTAT, the link we shared in the slides. And then I pass over to Lauren for a little bit other topic, intervention success, how to using the recidivism rate as an indicator of effectiveness of interventions.
So as you may know, recidivism is a key measure of the effectiveness of the criminal justice system. An essential use of recidivism data is to evaluate the effectiveness of correctional interventions. Tracking whether individuals reoffend after release is crucial for developing and evaluating criminal justice policies and interventions that aim to reduce crime and support successful reintegration. As Nicole had mentioned, there is a significant body of research that has assessed the impact of various interventions on successful reintegration, using recidivism as an outcome measure. Generally, individuals who do not reoffend after release are considered successfully reintegrated, whereas those who reoffend are seen as having failed to reintegrate. To better understand the existing data, Public Safety's Research Division has conducted a systematic review of reviews on the effectiveness of correctional interventions designed to reduce recidivism. Next slide, please. So put simply, a review of reviews is a type of research that summarizes findings from multiple systematic reviews on a specific topic. To this end, several scholarly databases were searched to identify systematic reviews assessing the effect of one or more correctional interventions on recidivism among adults. One of our inclusion criteria was that reports had to include a direct measure of recidivism. This really highlighted the lack of a consistent definition of recidivism in Canada and internationally. Among the 141 systematic reviews we included in our study, measures of recidivism varied widely, from rearrest and reconviction to self-reported data from individuals or their families. Significant differences were also found concerning follow-up periods, target populations, and subcategories such as sexual or violent recidivism. Unfortunately, we will not be discussing the results of our study in this presentation, as our findings have not yet been published, though keep an eye out as it will be published in the near future. Next slide, please. In conclusion, there is no single definition of recidivism. Various factors need to be considered when measuring recidivism, such as crime type, population, and follow-up period. And finally, accurate measurement of recidivism is crucial for the development and evaluation of criminal justice policies and interventions, It helps identify which interventions reduce reoffending, supports evidence-based decision-making, and ensures resources are allocated effectively. Next slide. So thank you all for listening. I'm going to pass it off to Nicole for the discussion portion.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lauren. And I don't know if you noticed, but we did a couple of plugs for some of our publications. CCRSO is one, but our upcoming review of reviews, and Lauren is going to be putting in the chat. We do have a list of individuals to whom we send updates on our research. So she'll mention that in the chat. So if you want to be on that list, don't hesitate. We do connect from time to time, and we will let you know when a new publication comes in. But maybe just for the discussion, as I mentioned when we first started, and we're very excited to have the conversation with you, and I hope it's one of many. But I'm sure you have questions for us, but on our end, we had some as well, and we were wondering like what key findings you will take away from this presentation, if there's any that were unexpected, and then how is this going to be applicable in your work? And of course, we're always listening to see if there's anything else that we can add to our research and that will support a broader range of partners who will access our research. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nicole and Sung and Lauren. That was really, really informative. And I think a great place I love that you left room for some conversation and discussion with, I think, people. I certainly have some, I can certainly feel like I have some key findings. Some things were unexpected for me, and certainly they do have implications for our work. So yes to those things for me. But as a good host, I'll open the floor up. I do see some questions popping in the chat. And so just a really easy one maybe for somebody on your team to answer. Steph is asking about whether you've got the years that the study, I think it was case study 3 that you were referencing, were recorded.
So yeah, case study is a jury stat. So in the jury stat, the study cohort included in those who released in 2015, 2016. So from that, it followed 3 or 4 years. So it's quite recent, yeah, cohort.
Super. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. Also, a question from Susan. Is there any chance that the definition used in Canada will not include the administration of justice offenses?
So maybe I maybe ask I think it depends. And as you've seen in terms of our research, depending on what we look at, we'll use different definition of recidivism. I will let our colleagues in terms of policy, in terms of FFR. For us, we tend to have it to be able to demonstrate that there are differences. And so it's a way of almost taking it out to be able to look at other areas or other types of offenses. So I don't know if that necessarily answers your question, but in terms of our research, it will depend on what the question is.
Yeah, no, I think to Susan's point there, disaggregation is really helpful. I think in these when we're trying to understand such a complex topic. A couple of things that popped up for me just on your systematic review of reviews. Wonderful that you guys are doing that. Do you have a sense of when that might be publicly available? You have a target date in mind?
We're looking at this winter. That would
Okay.
be the target date. We have a couple of publications that have to go out before this one. So it's also a matter of workload for communication colleagues. So
fair enough. Okay, it's just nice to know when to check back in.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. Thanks. One of the things that actually struck me about the unexpected findings, there was a couple, and in terms of implications for work that we do, I thought it was really curious about the range for 18 to 34 as a target when we're learning a lot more, especially in the youth justice sector, when we're looking at things around conversations related to emerging adults. And so thinking sort of about the 18 to 24 cohort and whether you might consider disaggregating based on and just having that 18 to 24 window, maybe support, see if there's a difference between sort of 25 to 34 and where that, because it's a big age range, right? 18 to 34, when you think about youth and how we understand the developing brain and that sort of thing. So I thought that was kind of interesting as well. But I know we also had lots of questions come in advance. Maybe some of the folks who are here in attendance today have some of those questions.
Well, Louise had a question on
Oh,
case
yeah.
3 on there's a recidivism definition. I don't know if Sung, if you can go through that again, maybe. And
Sorry, which question?
so Louise said case 3, recidivism. Oops, now I've lost her.
It says, can you go through the first example again and why it is a recidivism event in one way and not in the other? For case 3, there we go.
Oh, yes, yes. So K3. So yeah, just we define first point, we define the recidivism event is a reconviction. So, and then we have a other option, which date we can consider we measure recidivism. So it's a kind of data availability issue. So not all the data set has a multiple date. I mean, even just one data is only conviction and condition date. But for this, a big advantage of using the pan-Canadian data. So we have all the offense date and court date and correction state. So we kind of measure which data is more accurately present their recidivism event. So when you look at the left side, so of it's all three cases. I mean, the first case is a conviction, but you see the offense date is happened before 3 years. So just assume we calculate the recidivism rate within 3 years. When consider offense date, it happening within the time frame 3 years. But when you consider only the conviction date, it's out of 3 years follow period. So we don't count that as a recidivism. So depending on the what date we consider to measure recidivism, but we consider that offense date is a more accurate way to measure it. So that's why there's difference.
I understand. Thank you.
Thank you, son. Great question,
Welcome.
Louise. Thanks for that clarification. I think
Mhm.
it was helpful for more than just you. So that's great.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to manage the chat here. Do you pair this with thriving outcomes? So employment, mental health. I'm seeing things that look very much like the pillars of the federal framework. So wondering if you're pairing that against those other outcomes for thriving.
Sung, do you want to talk about our project with the research data center at StatsCan?
Yes, so the data actually located in the research data center in Statistic Canada. So Public Safety Canada have access of the data set. The data set actually, I explain it. So in the first trace that we only presented the overall recidivism rate. But another advantage of using those kind of data, we can link with other socioeconomic data. It's like employment and mental health education. So the project we are currently working on, we take a look at what is the relationship between the socioeconomic and recidivism among individuals, and also compared to the white counterpart too. So, and then we also look at the Black Canadian as well. What is the unique, I mean, relationship between their socioeconomic and reconviction. So that helps how we can help them to successful, I mean, reintegration in community. So that is the good question, and actually we're working on to address the gap of research.
Super. Thank you, Sung. Another question from the chat from Dennis regarding the reconviction rates data. Is this linked to higher needs amongst persons released from custody as compared to persons doing their sentence in the community?
Yes. Let's see.
There we
How
go.
do we answer? Yeah. Okay. Yes, because yeah, the one reason the custody, the who sent in custody is higher rate is because definitely in the court system they consider their risk to the for the sentencing. So court make a decision based on the risk assessment. So high risk, they indicate a high risk, they put in the custody but the low risk people community. So that outcome is kind of support the court system. How do they classify the custody sentencing, community sentencing? Yeah, which means yeah, there's a highness among the person released from the custody because they have a more prior history of the crimes. Also, they have more some risk factors associated with recidivism. So yeah, that is definitely they need more needs in the correctional system and after release the community. Yeah.
Thank you. Lots of stuff coming through, so I'll do my best to get through these. From Lindsay, could this recidivism data negatively impact record suspension policies? So if there are high recidivism rates, could that push the government to change eligibility for record suspension based on your new data? How could the government use this data to keep people in jail longer? Lots of questions. Answer whichever components you like. That's yeah, different elements there. But I think certainly public safety is looking at the record suspension policies as well, and so yeah, I don't know if you've made some of those links.
So we can answer for our policy colleagues. So on that front, and they're not here today. So I can't answer for what will the government do with this type of data. But Sung, do you want to take a stab in terms from a research perspective?
Yeah, so I don't see the negative impact of record suspension policy because if we develop more accurate recidivism and then leading to the more valid risk assessment method and skill, it helps who is eligible for record suspension. So risk is kind of one of the component they consider, I think, using the record suspension policy. So I don't see the negative, but I see more positive effect. So more lower, I mean, the people at low risk get more eligible for the record suspension and they're more successfully integrated in community. So I see it that way in research perspective, but let's jump into any policy perspectives.
I gather that this is a challenge between the research and the policy in the
Yeah.
best of times.
Yeah.
That's fair. Um, Thanks, Steph, for the comment on barriers in custody versus community. Definitely agree with that. A follow-up to the thriving outcomes question. How do you define this for youth under the majority and early adulthood up to 30 since they are in development? Is that something that's being considered? I think that's back to sort of my comment about sort of the 18 to 24 cohort. And I would add into, I think, one of the pieces of the pillars as well in terms of the thriving outcomes is that intersection around housing and homelessness as well. And so kind of looking at how to integrate those statistics. Because of course, recidivism is one metric around like that can be sliced up many different ways, but it's all part of a much more broadly complex system, right? That we need to understand and integrate into policy as well. I don't know if there's other questions. I know we had a lot of questions that came in advance as well. Nicole, I don't know if there's any of them you want to speak to.
Well, there's one I had from Pam that said, why not data from all provinces?
Oh, yeah, sorry,
I think
Pam.
a great question.
Yeah.
As well, there wasn't data from the federal as well, right? The CSC data was not there. So the reason I mentioned the NJSI at the beginning, so the National Justice Statistics Initiative, is to show how complex the data integration in Canada is. And we've been working at this for for, for many decades. And it's still a work in progress. We are quite lucky with the data that we have, but at the same time, not enough. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done together. So the 5 provinces, the 5 jurisdictions for which we have data, is that because those are the jurisdictions for which all the data was with Statistics Canada, and so that we were able to do some of the data, or Statistics Canada was able to do that data integration. Since then, my understanding is that PEI has been able to provide that type of the information required. Ontario Youth as well has updated its data holdings as well. And CSC is in the final stages with Statistics Canada. So it's always a work in progress. Part of the issue, there's 2 big issues. I mean, there's lots of issues, but part of it is privacy issues, and there's privacy legislation that are different in a wide variety of jurisdictions. And so it's not easy at times to modify legislation to be enabling that, but there's also technical systems that need to be updated. There's definitions that need to be standardized. So it's a lot of work in progress, but that's the reason why there's no data from all provinces and territories for this. I hope that answers, but happy to take on.
Well, there's lots of great questions. I'll invite people to continue in the chat. I mean, there's a lot of really granular questions that were asked in advance. I think one of the $1,000,000 questions, in my view, from the purpose for sort of holding these as well, is do you, as the research team at Public Safety, how confident do you feel that the Department of Public Safety will be able to get to a point where you can measure a reduction in recidivism over time as it pertains to the federal framework to reduce recidivism? Do you think you're on your way to getting there? Is it just made all the more complex by the research that you're doing and unpacking that, is it possible, not possible? So just sort of not to like oversimplify what I think is a big question, but it would be good to have a sense from you folks if you're feeling like you're getting to a place, especially for those of us who are advocating for this framework to be a lever for change in Canada in terms of how we address people post release, that we think about whether there's some optimism from you about getting to a place where we can reasonably measure a reduction, whether it's perfect or not, right? But to find something that we feel comfortable measuring that is reliable. And do you feel like we're going to get there?
So maybe ask staff to answer in terms of the FFR and what the framework itself is using in terms of measurements. In terms of the READ contact study, which we feel is probably the most rigorous way to measure recidivism, it all depends on all partners to be able to provide that data so that we have a fulsome understanding of the pathways in and out of the criminal justice system. And so it's not a public safety per se responsibility. It's how to, and we don't collect data. We're not a department that collects data. It's our partners across the country that actually do. So I think there's for being the representative on the liaison officer committee, I am always privileged to see the collaboration between partners across the country, but it is complex. And so, we've just briefly alluded to it when we were doing the presentation, but the more we get some of those provinces and territories and CSC within the integration of the system, the better we'll have in terms of crime trends across Canada.
Thanks, Nicole. Steph, did you want to add anything?
Actually, I don't have anything. It's we're working very closely with our colleagues in research to use this data to help measure the recidivism rates. So we're continuing to work closely. We know that there's some challenges there, and we know that those need to be addressed so we can help to move forward with this work.
Thank you, Stephanie. Very quickly, well, Danielle squeaking in at the last minute here. When comparing recidivism between people who received custody versus community sentences, is there any consideration for how custody may be contributing to recidivism? For example, being in custody generally takes you away from the key factors related to reducing recidivism. So, housing and employment, those things that are protective factors, right? It may
Mm.
not be as simple to say that those results are solely reflective of accurate risk assessment. Um, any consideration for how, I mean, I would extrapolate this to the data you see on Indigenous recidivism rates. I mean, in terms of what is happening inside of our institutions, I found that to be quite an unexpected number in terms of what CSC is making available for people in custody and those rates. And there's a bit of a disconnect to me there in terms of what you're seeing with your numbers versus how the service might be responding to what's happening inside versus the outcomes for those numbers. So it's a large budget item, right? So
Yeah, just for the research perspective, that could be addressed by the current data set, but it's not out of scope. We're not our objective is not that way, but just research and methodological perspective. We have in the data set there's a pre the any information socioeconomic status and pre-custody and after custody. So definitely we can compare those relationship and then recidivism. So yeah, we do more feasibility study, but again, it's not our kind of current scope of study, but very interesting question.
yeah.
So yeah, if you need more about the access to RDC data, so you can actually get the data from the RDCs that can. So yeah, but there's a good question, but it's a kind of like feasible, but yeah, again, yeah, I need to do some feasibility study.
Right.
Yeah, and Anita, see if there's things that are top of mind. I mean, we try to align what it is that our policy and program needs, right? But if there's interest in submitting to us, some of the research questions you may have. Now, we may
Sure.
not be able to answer, and it may not, yes, it might be CSC, for example, or the
Yeah.
provinces and territories, but we are definitely open to suggestions.
Great.
The other thing too that we're working on is supporting on rural crime in Canada, and there will be work from one of our researchers to that end, and on that front we're also receiving input in terms of what are some of our partners, what their interests are. So keep them coming.
We will, yeah, we'll absolutely send you the questions that we received in advance and pull the ones from the chat as well, just
Yeah.
for your records. Thank you so much for the generosity of your time. We're a few minutes over today. Really appreciate all of you, Lauren, Sung, and Nicole and Stephanie for being part of this today. We have created, before everyone takes off, we're just going to pop into the link, a link into the chat, sorry, a post-webinar evaluation survey to help us improve future webinars. So please do take a moment to open that up and let us know if there's some feedback you want to give us. And speaking of future webinars, our next one is happening in November. The webinar is going to look at the intersection between youth justice and youth homelessness. So I'm sure we'll touch on that emerging adults conversation as well for sort of that 18 to 24, but also those sort of 18 and under. The webinar will feature a presentation by my research colleagues, Dr. Erin Day and Dr. Jessica Bramo, who will share insights from their partnership with SLSC and the National Youth Justice Network on the Pursuing Justice Project. So that's November 19th, same time as today, 1 p.m. Eastern. And the link to register for that webinar is now going to the chat as well. And yeah, we'll follow up with everyone who's attended today. Thank you for your extra few minutes, but we will send the recording of the session and the link to the webinar evaluation and a link to register for November's workshop. So thank you everyone for your time today and your excellent questions and your engagement. And we hope to see you again for the next one in November.